Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Dr. Harris by Clara Ann Simmons. Narrated by April Doty. Chapter 1. The heart of Manhattan's Watson Memorial Hospital is a three-ring circus. Doctors bark orders, nurses scurry between rooms, and orderlies wheel patients through the organized chaos. Everyone is focused on their own act of pessimism or hope. Around me, a cacophony of beeps, buzzes, and distant voices whisper in my ears. The sharp scent of antiseptic stings my nose, mingling with the lavender perfume I dabbed on this morning in a vain attempt to mask the hospital smells. Strangely, this controlled chaos feels like a home away from home, my sanctuary from the stresses of the outside world. I stroll down the fluorescent-lit hall, familiar now in my second year of residency. Some offer a wave or tired smile as I pass. A few take the time to mutter a brief, "Good morning, doctor," their minds already focused on the patients and tasks ahead. Well, if it isn't Dr. Arya Kumari slumming it in this part of the hospital, I joke over my shoulder to the tough-looking woman in blue scrubs behind me. "We miss you in cardiac surgery, you know," she winks, her huge brown eyes crinkling with warmth despite the cocky grin. "Just in case you decide to choose a specialty, the new residents just don't have your spark." I snort, rolling my eyes dramatically. "Is that your professional medical opinion, doctor?" Working with Dr. Kumari last year was an experience like no other. She just transferred here from LA's Collins Memorial with her wife, adopted kid, scruffy dog, and 2 cats in tow, ready to take on the New York hospital scene. Arya Kumari is the opposite of your typical prestigious cardiac surgeon. Raised in the slums of LA by Indian immigrant parents, she clawed her way up from nothing to follow her passion for medicine. She looks more back-alley brawler than a top medical school-educated doctor, with her pierced eyebrow and the faint shadow of a teardrop tattoo peeking above her collar. She swears every other word without thought. But behind the brash exterior lies a heart of gold. Easily the most helpful doctor I've worked with, along with Ines Torres, though Ines doesn't really count, since her girlfriend also happens to be my best friend from college and former roommate. "Oh, and your jackass of a boss is looking for you," Arya calls out as I continue down the hall. I let out an exaggerated groan, eliciting a chuckle from her. Just another day at the office. The smile evaporates from my lips as I see my boss striding toward me. His icy blue eyes and neatly trimmed silver temples give him an air of arrogance. Over 6 feet tall and carrying extra weight around his middle, he lumbers toward me with less grace than he'd like. With his intimidating presence, he reminds me of a silverback gorilla dressed in a white coat. "Good morning, Rachel," he purrs, stroking my left arm. It's a habit I once tolerated, but now makes me recoil. "How's the universe treating you this fine Monday morning?" His bleached white veneer flashes in a forced grin. "Oh, surviving," I reply casually, with a non-committal shrug. "And how was your weekend?" He peers down at me over his glasses. "Meet anyone special lately?" Like clockwork, the same invasive question every Monday. Never forgotten, constantly prodding me about my personal life and dating prospects, as if I'd disclose those details to him. "Can't complain," I say dryly. "You're looking radiant today, by the way. New haircut?" Arya swears my boss watches too many medical dramas and fancies himself the protagonist, wooing all the young nurses and residents. The worst part is, he believes in his own delusion. He can't seem to stop hitting on any woman under 40 who crosses his path. "Oh, and my wife is out of town for a few days on business," he adds casually. "Care to grab a drink after work sometime this week?" He arches an eyebrow, grinning expectantly. I fight the urge to vomit right there in the hallway. I have patience to see Richard, I reply evenly, struggling to rein in my disgust. I quicken my pace to pull away, feeling his eyes follow me for a moment. "Think about it. Offer's open if you change your mind," he calls after me with unearned familiarity. "We'd have fun." I stay silent, not trusting myself to reply professionally. Just 2 more months under his supervision in this program. I'll choose another specialty if it means avoiding working beside him in the future. Doesn't help that his father-in-law sits on the hospital's board of directors. Soon his inappropriate proposition fades into the distance behind me. I begin my morning rounds, checking on patients, starting with Mr. Johnson in room 402. At 70 years old, he's recovering well from an aortic valve replacement surgery last week. A perpetually cheerful and optimistic man, I can't help but smile when I see his name on my patient list for the day. There are some people you just root for a little harder. In the next room over, 403, a little girl's innocent laughter reaches my ears. 6-year-old Emma sits propped up in her hospital bed, surrounded by a wall of get-well toys and balloons. She grins up at me as I enter, her eyes sparkling despite the IV needled into her arm.
"Rachel!"
Emma calls out as I enter her room.
"I made you a picture. It's you!"
She hands me a crayon drawing of what looks like a stick-figure doctor caring for a smaller stick-figure patient in a bed. Well, would you look at this masterpiece? This is fridge door gallery material for sure. Should we put it in a museum instead? Emma giggles, a grin lighting up her face despite her missing front teeth. Her smile could outshine the sun itself. My heart inflates like a hot air balloon, reminding me why I chose this career, even on the hard days.
"On your fridge,"
she declares. Then that's where it will go. I'll bring you a photo tomorrow so you can see it in its new home. I smile back as I check her vitals one last time before moving on. I take a deep breath as I leave Emma's room, bracing myself for the next visit. Claudia, a 45-year-old woman, wages a relentless battle for her life behind the next door. I enter quietly, taking in her fragile form under the thin blanket. Life and death, side by side. "Good morning," I whisper, clasping her slender hand. "How are you feeling today?" She opens her eyes slowly, pain etched on her gaunt face. "I've had better days, Dr. Harris. The pain is bad today." Her voice is barely a whisper. "I'm sorry to hear that, Claudia. Let's increase your medication a bit to help ease it. Does that sound all right?" I fluff her pillow gently. She gives a small nod, unable to expend the energy to respond. We can only watch helplessly as her light continues to dim before our eyes. "Hit the call button if you need anything at all. Someone will come right away," I remind her. I glance at my watch. It's almost time for a short break on this non-stop day. Time flies in this job, for better or worse. Chapter 2. My mind replays the last worrisome patient as I head back to the break room for a much-needed respite. Then the emergency pager blares, jolting me like a lightning strike. Adrenaline courses through my veins. "Major car accident coming in. Woman named Natalie Fay. Critical condition," my boss announces in his usual monotone, not even glancing up from his chart. His lack of emotion when announcing critical cases always strikes me. I can't decide if he's become utterly desensitized over the years or internalizes his feelings too deeply after decades in medicine. Either way, his detached demeanor never wavers, not even a fraction. When I was an intern in cardiac surgery, Dr. Arya Kumari kept her cool in the OR, even during tense open-heart operations. But afterward, you could see each patient affected her. Losing one completely devastated her. Richard seems to feel nothing at all. I rush after him down the fluorescent-lit hallway, heart racing, mentally preparing to do everything humanly possible to save this woman, coming to us clinging to life. Just another adrenaline-filled day as a resident in the ER. My heart pounds erratically, echoing in my ears as we push through the double doors into the chaotic emergency room. "What's the situation?" Richard barks at the team swarming around the gurney. "Female, 32. ID confirms name as Natalie Fay. Major car accident based on paramedic report. Trouble breathing and seizures in the ambulance. That's all we know for now," a nurse briefs us urgently. Richard nods slowly, almost solemnly, listening to the rapid-fire medical terms and vital signs being called out as the team evaluates her. I can't help but glance at Natalie's broken body. She looks so vulnerable and small, lying there, battered and bloody, dark hair matted to her forehead. My stomach twists. "We're going to need to intubate to stabilize her," Richard announces. "Are you sure that's necessary already?" I question, without thinking. Richard glares at me, his blue eyes icy. "Did I ask your opinion, Dr. Harris?" he snaps, suddenly abrasive, a stark contrast to his usual flirtatious tone with me. I raise my hands in surrender, not wanting to challenge my boss with everyone watching. I agree about the likely brain inflammation from trauma, but inducing a coma seems overly aggressive without further tests. From what I've seen, it often leads to more extended ICU stays and other risks associated with ventilation. Maybe a lighter sedation could work, but I won't question an experienced doctor's call. We leap into action without a second to spare, carefully inserting the endotracheal tube. The room buzzes with tension, all of us holding our breath. Time seems frozen. "She's stable. Let's move her to the ICU," Richard announces, breaking the spell. Our work here is done. Now we wait for her to be transferred to intensive care for the most critical phase of recovery. If all goes well, I may see Natalie again in a few days before she's moved to a regular room. Richard nudges my shoulder, jolting me from my thoughts. "Follow me." I trail him down the sterile hallway, unsure if he plans to scold me for speaking out earlier. But I can't shake Natalie's image from my mind. Despite the bruising, she was strikingly beautiful. Toned figure, without an ounce of fat. Flawless. She must spend hours sculpting that body in the gym. "What's the plan for her from here?" I ask. Richard's brow furrows in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Natalie, the car crash victim. Isn't that what you wanted to discuss?" "Oh, no. I just wanted to confirm our drinks tonight," he replies casually. I must fight the urge to slap that smug grin off his face. A wave of rage courses through me. We just put a woman in a medically induced coma with a brain bleed. She may have permanent damage, if she even survives, and this pompous jackass only cares about cheating on his wife. "I don't think that's appropriate, Richard," I reply, through gritted teeth, struggling to stay professional. He shrugs. "Suit yourself. But the offer stands if you change your mind." He winks before sauntering off, leaving me fuming in the hallway. How did a pompous jerk like Richard, obsessed with any woman young enough to be his daughter, get appointed head of the ER? Oh, right, daddy-in-law pulling strings on the hospital board. Classic nepotism. "They'll run more tests, Rachel. Once we know more, we can properly treat her. She's not our concern now." He shrugs, as if her life doesn't matter in the least. "Would it have been so hard to say that up front?" I ask, straining to stay professional. Richard gives me an icy stare that could freeze hell itself. "If you weren't so hot, I would have transferred you to another department by now," he spits out scornfully. "You know you can't talk to me like that, right?" "But you won't say anything to anyone, will you?" he whispers, leaning in until his face is just inches from mine. I swallow hard, too stunned to respond. My breathing quickens, and he knows he's won this round. His smug grin returns as he turns on his heel and saunters away. "I'll update you if anything changes," he calls over his shoulder. "Oh, and drinks tonight? Your loss. You're not the only hot resident, you know. That attitude won't earn you a permanent ER spot." "Pompous jackass," I mutter under my breath once he's out of earshot. Chapter 3. The harsh beep of my pager pierces the quiet, startling me from my brief respite. We only use them for true emergencies now, so I know it must be serious. "Harris, get down to the ICU and check on the woman in a coma. I'll be there shortly," reads Richard's message. My frustratingly charming boss. I drag my feet down the long, dimly lit hospital corridor toward the intensive care unit where Natalie Fay lies motionless. The too sterile scent of antiseptic hits me as soon as I step through the double doors, both reassuring and terrifying at the same time. As I approach Natalie's bedside, I take in her utterly still form under the stark white sheets, the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the steady beeps and whirs of machinery. The ICU is a world unto itself, a world governed by monitors emitting frightening alarms, one of cautious conversations spoken in hushed whispers, a world that pulses with tense energy during visiting hours as families keep silent vigils, praying for any small sign of hope. I let out a long, slow breath as I sink into the chair beside Natalie's bed, her chart in hand. She's still intubated, nestled into a tangled mess of wires and tubes connecting her fragile body to the imposing machines around us. She looks almost like a mermaid caught in a fisherman's net. The heart rate monitor blinks an eerie, endless green, faithfully tracking each beat of her heart. It's a chilling reminder that beneath the exterior stillness required for her medically induced coma, life continues fighting relentlessly on. I catch myself smiling softly as I gently brush a stray strand of dark hair off her battered forehead. The caked blood may be gone, but angry bruises and cuts remain. As I study her face, I can't help but wonder about her life before the terrible accident landed her here. One of the nurses mentioned no emergency contacts were listed for her. No friends or family have come to visit. It must be so painfully lonely, waking up alone from a coma with no familiar loved ones by your side. "Natalie?" I find myself whispering her name softly, as if, on some level, she can still hear me. I'm not sure why I reach out to lightly squeeze her hand, my thumb absently caressing her soft skin. Maybe it's some instinctive attempt to offer her strength and comfort as she clings to life. And for a fleeting moment, I can almost imagine the sound of her laugh. I wish someone who truly cared was here holding her hand, talking to her, urging her to keep fighting. That's real love, being steadfastly by their side even when the light seems to fade, offering words of hope and comfort even when your own voice shakes with fear. So, I talk. I tell her a silly story of the day's happenings around the hospital. Pointless ramblings, since she can't actually hear, but it makes me feel a little better. Just then, Richard comes sweeping into the ICU, his white lab coat billowing around him like a superhero cape. His Cheshire cat grin means he must be in a good mood, but my stomach sinks at the sight of him. "Well, well, let's see how Miss Natalie Fay is doing today," he announces brightly. "No changes. Vitals remain stable," I report flatly, avoiding eye contact. I respond in the most professional way possible, without even looking him in the eye. He comes over and circles my waist slyly, making sure the ICU nurses can't see what he's doing. "Did you change your mind about tonight?" he whispers, pretending to check the patient's vitals. I grit my teeth and get up abruptly with the excuse of adjusting the IV drip. My job is to treat patients, to learn from the doctors who supervise my work on each rotation, not to sleep with them. For a few moments, I ponder confronting him, even talking to the HR department. At the very least, I'd like to ask him why he keeps insisting on pushing the envelope in the vain hope that I'll change my mind when I'm never going to. "You haven't answered me," he insists, and I can't take it any longer. "Why do you keep trying with me when I've already told you 1,000,000 times no? Not to mention that you're married," I remind my boss, giving him my fiercest look. "My marriage is in the shit, Rachel. I'd like to get to know you better, see if we're compatible," he adds with a wink that's meant to be seductive, though it makes me want to puke in his pants. "And what does your wife think about that?" "I guess she's too busy with her yoga instructor," he replies with a shrug. It would almost be funny if it weren't such a strange situation. In the end, Arya will be right, and this man has escaped from a doctor's soap opera. "What about you, Rachel? You never answer me why you don't have a boyfriend." His tone turns my stomach once again. I take a deep breath and tremble with rage, wishing I could slap him in the face. "Did I hit a nerve? With that body of yours, aren't you any good in bed?" I clench my fists, wishing I could stick a scalpel in his eye, but violence wouldn't solve much, so I try to keep my composure. "That can't be it, can it?" Richard asks when he sees that I've become very tense. "Get out of here, Richard, please," I ask as calmly as I can. "I'll keep checking Natalie's vitals." "Oh, is that Natalie now?" he asks in surprise. "Please, Richard, I'm only going to ask you one more time," I sigh. My boss frowns and reluctantly hands me the medical chart. He practically slams it against my chest. Then he spins on his heel and leaves the room, but not before mumbling a cock-teasing slut between his teeth, loud enough for me to hear perfectly. Deep down, he knows a scandal wouldn't be good for either of us. Even if it's his word against mine, and I have everything to lose thanks to his contacts, suspicion would float in the air. And without Richard in the room, a strange peace comes over me. I return to sit by Natalie's bedside, captivated by her beauty as she sleeps. For some reason, the Brothers Grimm tale of Sleeping Beauty comes back to me. My grandmother used to read it to me as a child, and I imagine Natalie waking up to the kiss of a prince, or in this case, a princess. Chapter 4. Monday morning, I open my eyes only to have them fall shut again. I'm exhausted. The past week has been crushing. Long shifts at the hospital, paperwork piled on by my boss. It's like Richard is punishing me for refusing to have dinner with him. Some days the only thing keeping me going is Natalie. I visit her whenever I can. I've sat by her bedside this past week, talking to her, even though she can't respond. It's become an escape, a one-sided conversation where I tell her about my life. I know she likely can't hear me, but one of the ICU doctors says it certainly won't hurt. On Saturday night, I found myself opening up, telling her things I've never shared. My childhood dreams of fairy tales, my girlhood longing for a Prince Charming that I now hope will be a princess. How I'd get lost in fantasy romance novels in high school. Looking at Natalie, so peaceful in her bed, I wondered if she could be the happy ending I've always imagined. She seems kind and affectionate, no wedding ring or tan line, and now that the bruises are fading, she really is beautiful. For some reason, I told her about my parents' marriage, bound by routine more than love or passion. I promised her I'd fight with everything I have not to end up like them. I want a woman who attracts me, but also someone I can trust. A partner who will care for me as much as I care for her. Someone who makes me feel safe and loved. That matters more to me than looks. I want a book romance. The more time I spend with Natalie, the more I start to believe she could be that person, the one I've been waiting for, the woman I could build my dream with. Arya says I'm crazy. "That's really disturbing, dumbass," she told me. Maybe she's right, but I can't help seeing Natalie that way. You know, yesterday was a shit show at the hospital, back-to-back emergencies, and Richard's constant attempts to get in my pants don't help. I try to avoid him, but he's my boss and has a lot of power here, I explain, as if she can understand. The steady beep of the heart monitor has become as familiar as my own heartbeat. Sometimes I imagine she's just sleeping. I dream that she'll open her eyes at any moment, and I'll lose myself in them. I Googled you yesterday, I confess, in a hushed voice, as if it were our most intimate secret. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't resist. With your toned body, I thought you could be a pro athlete. I never guessed you were a dancer. Then I spent hours watching your YouTube videos. Seeing you dance on Broadway was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I hope one day I can watch you in person, I whisper, squeezing her hand in mine. I smile remembering those videos, her graceful movements, her beauty. It's an image seared into my memory. I sit a while longer, telling her my fears and frustrations, my doubts about choosing a medical specialty. Her stillness and our one-sided chats are a balm for my stress. I'm starting to worry about you and this woman in a coma, Arya whispers in my ear. Are you sure your wife is okay with this? I ask for the 100th time. According to Arya, we have what she calls an asexual polyamorous relationship. In practice, we cuddle in the break room during shared shifts, nothing more than pecks on the neck or cheek, but it makes me uncomfortable that she's married. I told you, Patricia trusts me completely. We met in L.A., and I already had this thing going with Laura Park. There's nothing wrong with affection. Everyone needs it, she assures me. Are you jealous of the coma woman? I ask. No. Fuck, you're an idiot. What kind of question is that? She snaps, rolling her eyes. Then what is it? I don't know. It's disturbing. You visit her every day. I think you're falling in love with her. I'm not falling in love, I protest. Fuck no, don't be a jerk. You're totally hung up on that woman. I mean, I admit, she is hot and all. But fuck, Rachel, she's in a coma. I only talk to her, I complain. Do you have any fantasies? Arya, I'm not going to answer that kind of nonsense, I assure her, turning on the bed to lose myself in her huge black eyes. Fuck, it's much worse than I imagined, she jokes, rolling her eyes. You're such an idiot. I want details, Arya teases. You're so silly. And you're crazy. But you're one of the few people I can talk to in this hospital. Yesterday I imagined you were completely cured, and we went to Central Park together, I tell Natalie, lowering my voice and glancing around to make sure no one overhears. It was sunset, and we strolled hand in hand along the paths, leaving the city noise behind. I pause as an ICU nurse approaches to check the monitors, something she's probably done 1,000,000 times. To her, Natalie is just another patient, a number. We spread a blanket on the grass, I go on, and you pulled out delicious sandwiches and a bottle of white wine. We laughed so much. As we ate, the sky transformed into vibrant pinks and oranges, and soon the first stars appeared. We kissed, your hair tickling my neck. I stop, realizing I'm stroking her cheek. I take a deep breath, try to compose myself. As I described it, the scene felt so real I was scared. For a moment, the world disappeared, and it was just Natalie and me on a romantic date existing only in my imagination. Yet I swear I could feel the warmth of her body curled against mine. I combed my fingers through your hair. You glanced up with such tenderness. My heart nearly stopped when you took my hand and kissed it. Slowly evening fell around us, and the darkness witnessed a perfect moment. Damn, maybe Arya's right, and I'm becoming obsessed with this woman. Chapter 5. I pry one eye open with a groan, fumbling to silence the offensive noise of my morning alarm. As the fog of sleep clears,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?